morning to everyone and welcome to today's presentation. As you can see from the slides that I've shared, the topic is project risk identification and management. And it's such a broad topic. Usually it takes a long period of presentation to cover the full blade of grass for this topic. But we'll do it today. I hope that I'll be given the opportunity to do a second round of it. And so I don't want to rush the presentation. So we'll go right into the belly of the presentation. So by way of outline, this is what I'm going to present. We're going to look at introduction to risk. We will do project risk management. We will look at as well the need for project risk management, then the project life cycle view of risk and why we need to embed risk with project management. We go through the risk management planning, which is a component of the project risk management. We do risk identification, and we talk about the other processes of risk management, hopefully, before the day ends. So we begin this way by way of introduction. What is risk? I mean, the literature on risk is replete with so many definitions. And in order not to bore you with an academic presentation, I'll go straight to what definition is relevant for us today. So risk, for me, the most simplest form and the most appropriate form of definition is what has been given by the ISO 3001 or 31000. It says risk is the effect of uncertainty on objectives. So simplicity. Other people think that risk must always be something very bad, but the most encompassing definition of risk is the one that ISO has given. We have other frameworks. We have the COSO framework. We have several other frameworks of definition, but we are going to do with the ISO definition today. So what do we talk about when we, as project managers, talk about risk? The PMI, the Project Management Institute, the Premier Institute for Project Management, the world over, defines risk as an uncertain event or condition that if it occurs, it has a positive or negative effect on project objectives. So risks have both positive and negative effects. Now, the Project Management Institute again identifies that the key issues that are at risk when it comes to projects, which most of you might have aware, with the project scope, the budget, time, resources, technology, and any unpredicted situation. These are the key objectives that are affected when risks are not achieved. It is also important for me to state at this point that for there to be a risk, there must be an objective. So if you don't have an objective, then there's no risk, because for risks to exist, it must be one that has an impact on objectives. So if you live in a life without any objective, most likely you don't have any risk. But whether you express your objectives or not, there are some objectives that are implicit, that will come naturally, even if you don't express it. So by and large, risk is everywhere, and it must always impact an objective. Now, it is also important to understand that risk is ubiquitous. When we say risk is ubiquitous, we mean that risk is everywhere dense, it is present. And we also understand from the definition that it could be negative or positive. Negative risks usually are called threats or challenges. And those threats and challenges that impact adversely on our projects or everything we undertake is are all negative risk. And it is also important for those of us who are project management experts, we understand that project is a temporary endeavor with a beginning and an end. So specifically, anything that threatens the achievement of objectives within these environments will constitute a project risk. And without wasting so much of your time, some understanding of projects may be good enough for us to appreciate. So even the fact that we woke up this morning to attend to this presentation is a project. It has a start, it will end, and it's supposed to deliver an outcome. So those are the factors. And when we talk of project risk management, we're looking at all those events and situations that could impact the objective of this presentation. So positive risks are generally opportunities. Again, we must understand that within the environment of risk, it is always said that there's always a silver lining in a dark cloud. And we know about the situation of the COVID-19, for instance, where even though it affected the world pervasively, some industries actually maximize the potentials, benefits in the pandemic. For instance, the technology companies, the mobile companies, and those companies who were able to spot the opportunities in there took very great advantage of the pandemic and made significant profit. So risk should be considered in both spheres as both negative and positive. Risks can be quantitative. These are risks that can easily be put into quantification that you can quantify. And they can also be qualitative. Very easy to quantify. In risk analysis and risk management, it should be possible for you to quantify all your risks as far as practical. So in risk literature, we always say that all qualitative risks must be quantifiable to a very large extent, and we must make the effort to quantify them. Now, project risk management really involves a couple of issues. Now, the PMBOK, and that's a project management book of knowledge, provides a very strong definition of project risk management, which is a subject matter for our discussion today. It says that it's a systematic process of identifying and analyzing and responding to project risk. So the key ingredients there are risk identification, risk analysis, and risk response. And project risk management, therefore, has 5 main components. The first one is what is known as the risk management planning. The second is the risk identification itself. The third issue of importance is qualitative risk analysis. Then we have quantitative risk analysis. Then we have risk response. So if you're a project manager, you must think of risks within these spheres. And if you are not able to go through all the processes as outlined, you may not be managing your risks properly. And then risk monitoring, another very important point, 6 points. Because at the end of the whole process, you should be able to monitor your risk, control, and that provides a feedback loop into the whole risk management process from all projects. Now, why do we have to manage risks on projects? And this is a very, very important question. Why? Now, first of all, it's important to state that we manage risks on projects in order to avoid project failure. The project management industry has very interesting statistics on the impact of risk management on projects. It says that about 50% of all projects fail due to improper risk management. That is awesome. That is significantly terrifying. And almost 80% or approximately 80% of projects are delayed because of late risk identification. So if you don't have a solid risk management in place, process in place, you will be hit by any and all forms of risk. And it is a global statistics. I dare say that if this study was conducted probably in Africa and even in Ghana, the figures will be more staggering than we see them. So this alone provides a very strong point and reason why we need to manage risk on our projects. Additionally, risk management confers a lot of benefits on all project managers. First of all, risk analysis is said to reduce project problems by almost 90%. That's quite impressive. So we give very good thought to the risk management process, and we are likely to be able to handle all our projects and reduce them by 90%. These are statistics which are very interesting. It also enhances proactive decision-making and prevents the situation of firefighting on projects. We should be able to predict project events, project risk, and when they happen, we should know exactly the steps and processes to adopt to manage them. Firefighting on projects by way of risk management is very inimical to project success. Other benefits of risk management on projects include the fact that it reduces surprises. You aren't going to be surprised by a lot of things if you put in place a very comprehensive risk management on your projects. It improves communication among stakeholders. So stakeholders will be well aware of what the key project risks are, what the project manager or the project management team is doing to improve or manage those risks. And when you communicate strongly from a risk management perspective, you give a lot of comfort to all the key stakeholders on a project. It also helps us to identify the likelihood and impact of problems before they happen. Then, most importantly, risk management promotes informed definition of project strength and weakness. We should be able to identify the strengths and weaknesses of all our projects. And if you put in place very effective risk management process, it gives you the leverage to be able to identify the internal strengths and weaknesses of the project. It also helps the project management team or the project sponsor, who is really responsible for risk management on all projects, to ensure a better assignment of responsibility for risk on each project. So each project must have an owner. Each project risk must have an owner. And you can only do that if you have a very comprehensive risk management framework. Then overall, risk management significantly improves the chances of project success. But with all these benefits, we still find that a lot of companies, a lot of businesses, a lot of project managers shy away from risk management. In fact, literature and statistics and research has it that risk management actually became a very thorough consideration on all projects and businesses in the very late 20th century. So it is pretty new, and many people don't like managing risk. And why do people actually run away from risk management? First of all, there's this mentality that we are too busy. The project is big. There are a lot of responsibilities on the project, so we are too busy. We can't spend time to go through the rigors of project risk management. So the organization is focused on solving problems. We want to face actual problems. Why do we waste our time by second guessing on problems that will happen in the future? So let the problems happen. We will deal with them when they happen. That is one of the major drawbacks to project risk management, this mentality. The other mentality is what I call the bad omen mentality. And the bad omen mentality portends that if you think negative, bad things happen to you. And this is very Afrotypical mentality, Afrotypical cultural mentality. Within the African culture, it is said that if you speak too much about bad things, you invite bad omen. So if you disclose the project risks, it will show that the project is weak. People will not appreciate, people will not believe in the project. So let's better hide these risks, and when they happen, we manage them. This bad woman mentality is anti-project management, and every project manager must be a project management risks professional. Another issue which is a significant drawback to project risk management is what is called the what can come will come mentality. What we say in Ghanaian parlance, what can come. Now, this means that we are saying we believe that there's very little we can do about risk. I mean, if you are destined to be confronted with any risk situation, it will happen anyway. No matter what you do, no matter the effort you put in, risk, if it will crystallize, it will crystallize. This mentality is also another one that doesn't encourage risk management. Then the final, probably the most important one, is the cost mentality. The risk management is too expensive. It requires resources, time, budget, and it represents a significant deviation from the project focus. So these are some of the very basic reasons why, in spite of the very well-established benefits of risk management, especially on projects, a lot of projects are run without proper risk management. Now, I want us to look at this one. This is the life cycle view of risk management projects. Now, the diagram here, we have increasing risk on the vertical angle and then value on the other. Now, the life cycle of a project goes through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 main stages. We have the planning and concept phase, the design phase, the bid and procurement phase, the construction phase, the occupancy or final takeover phase. Now, the line from the very top depicts risks and opportunity, and the one moving from the bottom upwards, rising from the bottom upwards, will depict the value at stake, the amount at stake. At the inception stage, at the project planning stage, the risk that the project will fail is highest. It is highest at this stage because a lot of things are new. A lot of things are being thought through. We are going through a brainstorming session. So really, when the project fails at the planning phase, not much by way of money is lost. Now, as we go through the design phase, the opportunities and risks on the project gradually fall right until the project is completed and taken over. The value that is gained on the project rises gradually through the planning and concept phase, through the design, and hits a maximum when the project is completed and delivered. However, at this point where the two curves intersect, especially where I've put the arrows, are the highest points where the impact of risks, the failure of the project is highest. So, I mean, in assessing project impact, we talk about likelihood of the risk and the probability, the impact. So we talk of risk significance. How significant is the risk? It's a product of the likelihood, the probability of that risk crystallizing, and what impact it will have on the project. At this stage, where so much money has been committed and a lot of work has done during the construction to the final phase, if the project fails, the impact on all stakeholders is highest. So let's come home a bit. I mean, for instance, at the planning phase, we would expect that in project planning and management in Ghana, a lot of thought or thinking should go into how even contracts are given out, the tender process. In the road sector, for instance, we know what happens. A lot of times we believe in the use of templates. So you have a situation where we use one template over and over. Then consequently, what we find out that there are certain factors within the tender process in the document, which change: legal issues, tax issues. And with my experience, I've realized that because we don't adopt a concerted approach in planning phase where we involve all the professionals on projects, we tend to grant some tax waivers on some of the projects and we find these tax waivers being signed into contracts. And when this happens, it creates a lot of problems. Last year, Ghana passed the Exemptions Act 2022. And the Exemptions Act includes exemptions defined as a waiver or variation of tax or levy, duty, fee, or charge. In fact, it is in Article 74 of our Constitution that where an act or any person who grants a permission or waiver of act is in breach of the Constitution, because it is only Parliament that has the power to approve tax waivers. But unfortunately, because we don't involve all project persons, the risks of the project start right at these phases. At the design phase, we even have considerations about issues of what we now have as the design build contract. A lot of engineers are complaining that this is going to take away a lot of capacity, because projects, as we all know, is about risk sharing, and he who calls the piper pays the tune. So if the contractors are bearing the significant risk of the project, it means that the road agencies and the authorities would have very limited say when it comes to such projects. And we are going into this era more significant because we are having financial difficulties as a country. So if people bring unsolicited applications to do projects, we would expect that government will buy into that. Now, if you look at the risk the life cycle perspective of projects, it gives us a very strong point to look at the risk at each phase as we identify the project risks and plan them. Now, there is also the need for us to integrate project risk management with the core concept of management. So what is the scope of the project? What benefits are we expecting? What are the feasibilities? Project quality in terms of standards, requirements, regulations, project management integration. How are we integrating the project management into the project lifecycle and considering all the environmental factors, both internal and external, that will impact on the project? Risk management is a core aspect of the management science. So it should not be carried out independent of the whole management cycle. And because there's a lot of time is running fast, I wouldn't speak so much about this slide. It is apparent that we all understand what the presentation here seeks to put across. We have to embed project risk management into the critical core management principles to be able to drive project success. So risk management planning, and now we are going into the belly of the 6 risk management process. It is important that on all projects, we think risk management, plan for risk management, or plan for the management of risk on all projects. So some of the questions we should be asking at this stage include: 1, how risky is this project? Is this a familiar project? Have we done it before? Is there a past project that we can reference, which can provide us some insight about the project itself? How viable is the project? How visible it is? What is the size of the project? Are we talking of a very big project, a small project, or medium project? Because size matters when it comes to risk management. It doesn't mean that small projects don't give problems, but what we talk about when we're managing risks is that size and complexity bring in their wake a lot of risk. Then the other question we should be asking ourselves is how important is a project? Who are the beneficiaries? Who is supposed to benefit from this project? When we go through this thinking process, then we are really embedding or starting the project management from a very strong risk management perspective. And it is important that in managing risk, these considerations are well thought of. So in risk planning, we have to understand that the outcome of project risk management is actually the risk management plan. The previous slide where we asked all those questions, and those questions are not exhaustive. I just mentioned a few of them. We should go through a brainstorming session to be able to tease out those questions on the project. Once we do that, we would come out at the end of that process with what's called a risk management plan, a project risk management plan. So it should contain the following: methodology. What kind of risk framework are we adopting? What processes are we using to ascertain the risk on the project? Roles and responsibility. Who does what on a project? How do we assign risk? How do we identify who is responsible for risk identification, risk analysis, risk classification? And risk management is a concerted effort. Everybody has to do it. When you go to the methodology phase where you determine the risk framework, the risk approach, the risk methodology, you assign responsibility, then you are on the verge of determining the whole package of the risk framework. Risk management must have a budget. We must budget for it. We must be able to understand the timings, what happens on the project, what do we expect to happen. If we know that we are in bad weather this time around, what measures are we putting in place to forestall this event? If the meteorological survey people tell us that we are expecting high rains, heavy rains this season, this should form our timing and planning of the risk management plans. What are the risk categories? We should be able to clarify them. What high risk, low risk, medium risk, and how we treat and handle them. And then we should also be able to define in our risk management plan the definitions of risk probabilities and impact. After teasing out all the categories, in the risk categories, you have to develop your risk register. You have to go through a process of identifying those risks and then putting them in the risk register. So you proceed to the risk identification. Thank you very much. The risk identification on projects really is aimed at identifying what the impacts or what the potential risk on the project could be and how they will impact the success of projects. So on what could happen on the project that could deviate the project from its original goals, timelines, and budget. And risk identification, which is the second aspect of the risk management process, is a very challenging task. It is not easy. It is not the responsibility of one person. Everybody has to be involved. Let us know from this point that risk identification is a continuous and iterative process. We need to ask all the why questions, the W questions, what's, the what if, when, why, and then where, which. These questions, as we begin to ask them, they will help us elicit all the risk on the project. If an issue is known, if anything that is known to happen is a fact, it's not a risk. It may be an issue. A risk is something that is likely to happen. Whatever has happened or we know has happened is a fact, is an issue, and therefore we cannot consider that process. And we must understand that risk management is a process, it is not an event. So the PMI, the Project Management Institute, have developed what we call the risk identification life cycle. We have the risk templates, specifications, basic identification, detailed identification, external cross-checks. Now, all these are the processes we have to go through on a standard project to develop the risk identification on every project. Because of time, I will not be able to go into the specifics. I'll need to run a few more slides, and if I'm given the opportunity next week or another time, we'll take this very thoroughly, where we go to the factors that are germane to us in the industry. But it is important for us to establish these metrics. That risk management itself is not a child's play. It is difficult, it is tough, but it requires everybody's work. We have to do it comprehensively. And it has to be done in reference to a framework. And usually for project managers, you do risk management of a project in reference to the Project Management Institute's PMBOK guide for project management. Then, 3 important conditions that we must understand, we must know when we are doing risk management or risk identification. First of all, it is important that we understand the project. What project are we talking about? 2, we should identify all risk events on the project. And then 3, we should document the risk. If we are able to go through these 3 time-tested models of risk identification, chances are that we'll be able to cover all the project risk, all the risk on the project, and be able to handle them well. Now, so it isn't, then when we finish the whole risk identification project, it should develop into what we call the project risk breakdown, RBS. So the standard stylized terminology for risk management or risk identification is the eventual development of the risk breakdown structure. It is the decomposition of all the risks on a project into their very individual components to enable extensive identification of the risks and the subsequent management. So what are the technical issues? What are the external issues in the project? What are the organizational issues? What are the managerial issues? And because of time and at the risk of it, we have other 5 more components to discuss. Now, so I would want to crave your indulgence to end this session here. And when the time is given to me, we'll handle the other aspect of the project where we go into the risk management itself. So today, what we've been able to do is understand what risk management is, project risk management is, what key considerations that we need to have or we need to take into mind when we are setting up a risk management framework, how to pay particular attention to risks on projects, how to identify the risk, and the need to do risk management.